Hey everyone, this is Fernando doing another video for more survivalists. 3 ways in which preparedness can actually ruin your life. These are things that I've seen happen several times in over 10 years of being involved in survival and preparedness. And you know what? The 3 of them are generated in some way by a doom, negative attitude towards life in general. That's the common theme these 3 have. And you know what? If there's one thing you absolutely need so as to overcome a disaster, an emergency, a challenge in life of any kind, is the opposite. Is a positive attitude. If you don't have a positive attitude, you're gonna be giving up on the inside. You're emotionally gonna be giving up before the fight in some way. So it is extremely important to be very, very positive. Why is it that there's so much gloom and negativity in the survival and preparedness community? I suppose that in a way it's not only just the fascination humans have with that, but it's also part of survival and preparedness itself. So as to go through possible scenarios, worst case scenarios, you have to look at it in a kind of a negative way. You know, well, what happens if this goes down this way, and I'm unfortunate enough that also this and this happens. How is it that it could possibly go down the worst possible way, taking into account all the odds and such? That's part of it. But we have to learn not to let that get into our lives and affect us on our daily lives. If you fail at that, you're already losing quite a bit. Being positive is a huge aspect of this. I was doing an interview. Well, it wasn't an interview. It was more like a conference with some people, and I was talking with a group of people that were, preparing and such. And I think I've told this story before. You know how you say that you have the glass of water, it's half empty or half full. Some people see it half full, some people see it half empty. Well, I was saying that you have to be of such a mindset that if you have this little bit of water, this amount of water, that's all you have, you should be the kind of guy that goes, you know what, I have plenty, I'm gonna be getting through this with that amount of water. That's all I need to get it. That's the kind of attitude you need. If not, you're already in a huge disadvantage. First, the way in which people overspend money unnecessarily. One good way of going about this is always keeping in mind the rule of 3s that says you cannot survive 3 minutes without air. So air is important. We talk about this a lot. We talk about the not being able to survive 3 hours of exposure. You need shelter. You need your home, a safe environment. You cannot survive 3 days without water. Water also important, and you cannot survive 3 weeks without food. So all of these are good ways of focusing on what is important. If you're buying food, it's hard to go wrong that way because you're going to be using it eventually. It's not as if you're not going to be needing to eat through 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks, or 4 years from now. Food is something that if you buy wisely, if you buy the stuff that you do eat and such, and don't waste regarding that, you're going to be eating it eventually. So that's a good way. In terms of firearms, for example, in terms of guns, yes, you do need a firearm for self-defense. Now, do you really need $10,000 worth of guns? Most probably not. I've spent my share of money in guns. I was a collector from a very early age, an actual licensed collector from a very early age, and thousands and thousands of bucks in guns. I've enjoyed every single one of them. I don't regret any of that, but be real. Are you doing that because you think you're going to be preparing better for the zombie apocalypse? Well, really no. Are you doing just because it's a sport you enjoy, because you're a collector? Of course, well, that's completely different. Now, what I've seen happen is people that don't have enough money to do it, they go into debt, they spend money they can't afford to spend, thinking that having those extra 5 or 6 guns, it's going to be saving them when the end of the world, whatever, comes. Because they're going to be arming their neighbors. Big mistake. They're going to be, I don't know. This is completely different from, for example, buying ammunition in bulk. If you shoot often, you're going to be, it's pretty much like food for shooters. You're going to be using it eventually. So buying ammunition in large quantities does make sense, because eventually you are saving money, not to mention right now when it's so scarce and people are going nuts about it. So that makes sense. Say for example, sometimes you see huge great deals. Sometimes you know, like it happened with the AK-47 at some time, was going like kits for $200 or $250. You buy 5, 6, 10 kits, and yeah, it's gonna be going up in price. Maybe you could make a little bit of money selling it later. But the key thing here is, don't spend money you cannot afford on things that you really just don't need. It's more about the information you have. It's more about the knowledge you've accumulated. Yes, you do need certain things, and I do reviews all the time. You see that in the channel. I review stuff all the time, hundreds of knives and flashlights and whatever. But that me doing that does not mean that you need all of this stuff. Actually, it's information that I put out there for you to make an informed decision. I do it myself. Whenever I'm about to buy something, I look at several YouTube videos, reviews, read them online, and then make an informed decision. If I'm putting all of that out there, maybe if you're looking, for example, at getting yourself set in terms of knives or a multi-tool, you see some of the videos that I've made, and you go, okay, you know what? I'm going to be getting a cold steel Bowie machete, like the one that I published just a few days ago in my blog. A 16-17 buck knife that it's of great quality. It was, I recommended people buying it a few years ago, went out of production. Now I saw it back again, and people bought it like crazy. If you needed a knife for 16-17 bucks, you couldn't go wrong with that. Same for like the Leatherman Wingman or Sidekick. Multi-tools going for 20-30 bucks that are actually very good multi-tools. You know, for less than 50 bucks, you're set in terms of a big knife and a multi-tool that you can carry like a folding knife. That's the kind of decision you should make. You shouldn't be buying hundreds and thousands of bucks of tools thinking that's gonna be improving your situation just because of having them, just because you have accumulated an excessive amount of gear. Especially if you cannot afford it, save the money. That's the best way to go. Make informed choices. Anything you buy, absolutely anything. Read reviews, watch YouTube videos, mine or someone else or whatever. Find information online. There's lots of it. Making informed decisions is a great way in which you actually do save money. Second, very common way in which I've seen people mess up their lives is retreating and running from I don't know exactly what, when there's really nothing to run away from. You know, thinking that the world is going to be ending, so they have to move to a retreat here and there and start doing things with their lives that they're really not used to or actually enjoy doing. The most extreme case of that would be people that even leave the United States entirely and move to some a country in South America where they don't understand the culture. You know, if you don't even speak the language, that's a huge mistake. Maybe 1 out of 50 people that do that are eventually happy with their choice. More often than not, guys, I'm talking about all this because people email me every single day with their stories, with their lives. They share all of this with me, so that's where I'm coming from. I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. That's why I'm you know, making reference to these 3 points. You know, moving to Costa Rica, thinking that's an excellent decision. You know what? If you love Costa Rica and that's the life you want for you, that's great. Now, thinking that you're going to be leaving USA and moving to Costa Rica so as to improve your survival odds, moving anywhere, it's very hard. It's not easy. You're always going to be an outcast. You're always going to be a foreigner wherever you go. Moving to a place where you don't even speak the language, and especially more so, moving to a place where the quality of life is not, pales in comparison to what you had in USA, that's an awful, awful call. Don't do that. Especially since you have so many great options within USA. You can move into different states, and that helps a lot. But moving to a third world country, worst thing you could possibly do, thinking you're improving something. Even moving to the sticks when that's really not who you are. If life for you is having a farm and that does it for you, that's great. Now doing that because it's a way you think you're gonna be ready for the zombie apocalypse of the end of the world, whatever, no. Actually, I know of a very well-known survival expert that he went bankrupt doing just that, moving to a farm thinking it was the best thing for him to do, and it just didn't work out. Huge financial mistake for him. Usually it's because there's no way for supporting them in these isolated places, kind of far away from job opportunities and such. That's then there's Mel Tappan, who is also a very famous. Well, he died some time ago, but one of the ways in which he financed all his ranch and super retreat was because of his wife. That was she was the inheritant of Firestone, the pneumatics. They had a ton of money, and that's how he financed all this stuff. But if not for that, he would be in trouble as well. So those are some of the most common mistakes. Finally, going paranoid and being obsessed with doom and the end of the world is a great way in which you can get divorced and lose your family. Again, very common story. Getting obsessed with the end of the world and this and that, becoming a paranoid guy. People don't take that very well. And if your wife is making comments about that, if you see your family, trying to avoid you and your kids and such, maybe that's an indication of you being a little bit too extreme with some of your views. So be careful with that as well. Take it as a measurement so as to test if you're too far out or not, if you're being reasonable or not so much. Guys, those are the 3 more common ways in which you think you're preparing, but you're actually messing up your life. Spending money when you don't need it, when you don't need to spend it, or when, even worse, you don't have that money to be spending on it, thinking, oh, I'm gonna be going into debt to prepare because the end of the world is coming. Common mistake. Don't do that. I'm gonna be retreating 1 gas tank away from civilization because the end of the world is coming. Don't do that, and especially don't do that to a third world country in South America where things are much worse than in USA. Your standard of living is going to be much, much worse as well. Don't go nuts on yourself and on your family. It's one of the best ways in which all the guys in the different forums are getting their divorces, and the family is avoiding them because they've gone nuts without even realizing at a point. Guys, take care, have a great day, see you on our next video.